Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Bateman, of course, and I'm coming to you almost live from the inside of my car so I can get some quiet space from the kids to talk to you about my ethnography project. So I did my research on conservative Judaism. Basically, there are three big main branches of Judaism, which is Orthodox. You'll see them with the curls in their hair, the black outfits, the really old school traditions. Second is Reform, which came about in the late early 1900s as a way to modernize Judaism. And then Conservative, which I did my project on. Conservative came from Reform Judaism because they basically said this is a little too liberal and we want something a little bit more traditional. And so, although Conservative came about after Reform, tradition wise, it falls sort of in the middle of Orthodox and Reform. So, in the old Cloverdale area of Montgomery, there is Agudath Israel Etzahayim, or AIEA. It's not the larger one on Narrow Lane Road, but it is sort of near that in the old Cloverdale area. So I went there for my first observation. I went to a Shabbat service, which is a Friday night Sabbath service, to celebrate the seventh day of rest on Friday night because the night begins the new day in Judaism. Then I had planned my second observation to return there when, of course, COVID broke out in Alabama. And instead, I had a phone interview with the rabbi, Rabbi Scott Kramer. He's a very intelligent man, a very nice man. And then for my third final project, I did watch another streaming service, and then I tried to pull all of that together to the best of my abilities. So the observations that I would like to share with the class, all in all, is this. Number one, the Sabbath rest is very important to the people at Agudath and, largely speaking, to the Jewish populace in general. It's not just a time not to work, but it is literally a sacred occasion, and you would welcome the Sabbath or welcome Lady Sabbath into your home like a dear friend or like a member of the family. And it's like a little tiny Passover. It's like a little tiny Easter or Christmas. A lot of Jewish families will use special tablecloths and special dishes. They'll light a candle that burns all throughout the Sabbath, and different styles of Judaism take the Sabbath rest more seriously or less seriously. Orthodox sometimes won't even turn on or off a light switch. Conservative, is somewhere in the middle. But no matter the permutation of Judaism, the Sabbath is very sacred and very important. The second takeaway is a sense of community. I heard some people in the class say this about their first observations, and the caricature you get sometimes from going to this or new place of worship is that they're kind of suspicious or not welcoming to newcomers or strangers. And I know I went one time, but in that one time I felt a sense of warmth. People came up and spoke to me, and not only out of a sense of obligation, but they spoke to me as if they were glad I was there, or as if they just wanted to do something kind and good. And with among themselves, there is definitely a sense that gathering together on Friday nights was a community affair, that they knew one another, that they cared about one another, that they wanted to be a part of one another's lives. And when I interviewed Rabbi Kramer over the phone, he said more than once how, he wished he could do more and be in the lives of his congregation more during this outbreak. And when I watched the live stream of the Sabbath service, he said more than one time, I love you guys, I miss you guys. It feels weird to be recording this in the sanctuary, in the chapel, alone without you. So 2 is a sense of community. And 3 was the heritage of Israel. So Judaism has for its Bible, the Hebrew Bible, or the Tanakh, what Christians would call the Old Testament, but Jews obviously don't call it the Old Testament because it isn't old to them. It's the current Testament. And if you're a Jew or a Christian, or, you can read books in the Bible or read other spiritual literature as if it's efficacious, as if it's, they're as if they are myths or parables or moral stories to be learned. And there's good spiritual teaching in the Hebrew Bible, of course, but to the Jewish people, and to the people at Agudath specifically, the heritage of Israel is something alive. It is something that the congregation is encouraged to enter into personally and to be a part of personally, as if it is their people, and because it is their people, I mean, ethnically and religiously, and as if the story of deliverance from slavery in Egypt and so on, into the kingdom of Israel and all that, as if that is your story that's still continuing into this day. And in a mystical way, it's like they're continuing on to live the story of the Jewish people. Myths aside, or fantastical tales aside, I read in a history book when I was taking my Western Civ class that the Hebrew Bible represents the single oldest, largest, densest, and most concise history of one single people group, an autobiographical history of one single people group. And the people at Agudath really own that for themselves. And the fourth takeaway, which was kind of an appendix to my final ethnography project when I wrote it, was this. The first three things that I mentioned, the Sabbath, community, and the heritage of Israel, are very real to the people at Agudath, but I had to realize, I had such a small encounter with the people. If I had spent my entire semester with them and interviewed every single person in the congregation, even then I would have only little factual knowledge, because I'm not a professional and this should not be thought of as something professional. And B, along with that, I had to take into account when I interviewed the rabbi, he made it very clear, this is one specific congregation, we have one specific practice and tradition, and there's so much variation in Judaism, probably even more so than the amount of variation in Christianity. And you might see two conservative synagogues or two Reform synagogues who do a lot of things very, very differently. And there are thousands of variations of Judaism, and he made it clear that what I'm telling you and the answers I'm going to give you are specific to my tradition. There are Jews who gather in synagogues, who celebrate Passover and Hanukkah, and they're atheistic Jews. They don't even believe in an actual God, but they continue in this tradition because it is just the tradition of the Hebrews, the tradition of the Jewish heritage and the Jewish ethnicity. And so there is so much variation from the hyper-Orthodox to the secular Jew that you can't really make these big pronouncements and say Jews believe this or Jews think this or Jews do this. And so it was an important realization to me to finalize my project, that it revealed to me how little I actually concretely know. It helped me to realize how much I don't know and how much I still have to learn. But it was a very interesting project. I enjoyed it through and through, and if it wasn't for COVID and all of that, I certainly wish that I could have done and explored more. But that was my project in a nutshell. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you have a great summer.